Hey, what's up, divine beings? It's your boy Marco Jack. I miss you so much. I've been working as a digital product manager here in Hong Kong for the past 6 months. And in the past 6 months, I've captured a lot of the insights and learnings throughout my job. But since I'm about to leave this chapter, I reckon I would share this in a video format for you. So let's get right into it. Before we start, I think this video is applicable to you even if you're not a product manager, because I will share a lot of general job insights I think that will be applicable to various industries. So point number one, I think it is to know your value. Prior to getting into this company and working here, I was working on my own project, Divikati. I was working on some startup project, and this was the first time I entered a larger organization. When I received the job description, it asked for a senior person. I was doubtful about my capabilities, but I decided to apply anyways because there's nothing to lose. Miraculously, I got the job. So throughout this time, even though I got the job, I was doubting myself whether I had the capabilities, whether I just presented well during the interviews, whether people liked me, how am I doing, what's my impression. A lot of these things was going through my mind. Obviously, I really had to put in a lot of work initially to get myself, understanding the product, understanding the stakeholder map, understanding the context, and that is really reliant on effort, not just experience. However, once I started feeling on track, this feeling also stuck with me. And what I learned is to understand your value, because throughout my experience, what I realized is that from my years of experience focusing on personal development, spiritual development, understanding myself, working on my energy, working on my mindset, working on my values, I never knew whether these things are valuable or applicable in the corporate environment. But what I realized it is. Like my positive mindset, my energy, your enthusiasm, those are all valuable attributes in a company, and people will appreciate that. People will recognize that. Even if they don't, keep that up because it will help you to stand out amongst the people and environment that you are in. And it's a rare trait, I think, for someone to have that continuous development mindset. So keep that going. The attitude of doing what needs to be done and not just doing what it is told, right? So kind of that entrepreneurial mindset is very valuable. Because what I realize is that sometimes you are told you need to do A, B, and C, but in your mind you know that actually you need to do A, B, C, also D and F. But it depends on your mindset. Are you someone that would say, hey, I just need to get it done and get it passed and submit my homework? Or you are outcome oriented and you're not there to purely appease the assignment per se. And that mindset, I'm not saying for me, I'm 100% in that mindset. Sometimes you need to pick your battles and don't overspend your energies. But on certain details, on certain things, you need to insist. And I understand my values that I'm willing to take the extra step. So know your values, know what you are good at, what skills and attributes that you innately have, and don't be afraid to project that character inside the work environment and be that authentic self. What I also learned and appreciated, I learned that from my previous job, is within the contractual negotiation part in the first step. Because you knowing your value will know what you can ask for. And prior to actually applying for the job, I did a lot of research on how to set up a good contract, how to negotiate, how to ask for what you're worth, going on, for example, Glassdoor, looking at reviews, talking to industry peers. All that homework is very good, right? Because once you had that conversation, it's harder to reverse those agreements. So, it comes from within. So do your homework, know your value. That's point number one. Sorry, just one more thing to add in the authentic piece. Since I am often the youngest person in the room, but I was in a position where I had to have a lot of meetings with more senior people. At first, I wasn't really comfortable knowing when to speak up, where is my place to be assertive. But however, I learned that there are certain techniques and certain places to raise your hand. For example, in a meeting, after everyone has shared their thoughts and you have a burning comment to say, don't be afraid to shine that spotlight on you and raise your hand. Sorry, may I have the permission to speak on this subject matter, for example. And often, if you do your homework and you understand the context very well, you are eligible to speak on that subject matter. You have authority to speak on that subject matter in a presentable, offering perspective. And that's what I learned, to not be afraid of those rooms and to be poised, to be stoic, and to pick my position. So that has been a valuable experience, to express yourself, speak up, but make sure also to do your homework. Point number 2, develop a wide spectrum. What I mean by this is every job is part of a department and you have your own set of responsibilities, right? However, at the end of the day, you're still part of a business. So you want to be the person, or I learned to be the person, to not only understand what's going on in my department, but across departments and across levels. There might be people more senior to you. There might be people below you. So you want to understand the vision, the mission, the strategy, the business objectives. Who are the key stakeholders across the organization? And how does that fit in to what you're doing and how you are expected to contribute to the overall success of the organization? That context is very powerful. However, what I've mistakenly did is to boggle myself a little bit too much sometimes on trying to understand and grasp the whole environment, and I can forget the little micro details in what I need to be doing. My reminder to you and to myself is get a hold and get a grip on the thing that you're doing. Really be the expert in your scope of your cake, but then slowly look around, understand the full customer journey, understand the full department, look up, understand that dimension as well. And shout out to Tony Fadell in his book Built. He did mention this, developing a wide spectrum, and I was innately doing it already, but by putting this perspective into context, it allowed me to know that, hey, this is what I should be doing. I think this is natural to me because I went to business school, but why this point is important is because at the end of the day, like I said, you're part of a business, and if you understand what your business objectives are, struggles, problems, opportunities, the industry space, right? You can also look beyond your organization. That can feed you a lot of ideas, a lot of information, and that can help your decision progress. That can help articulate your points. For example, in point 1, trusting yourself and knowing your self-worth, because you've done the homework to understand the full spectrum. When you give out a decision, you're not only coming from your perspective, but you can make a decision from a holistic perspective. So I think that is one of the many values that this point will do for you. So that's point number 2. Point number 3, personal systems. If you've been part of this channel, you know that I'm huge on personal and spiritual growth. And like in point number 1, I didn't know that, hey, what are these things really help in the real world? After working in a high stressful city, Hong Kong, very metropolitan, and in a high stressful job where there's a lot of information, a lot of responsibility I have to handle, what allowed me to have that peace of mind is the habits that I've been building. For example, journaling, my support system, my friend system, my coaching system, my mindfulness habit, a simple meditation, my sanctuary location where I know I can go and do a little bit of meditation, a little reflection, and get some sort of insight. My gym habits, the sauna, the float tank, like all these little things where I can just detach from work and have a little bit of peace and get rejuvenated. That is valuable, and you should treasure that. And that's what I've learned in this work experience. Not only that, your learning speed and system is also very invaluable, such as the habit of reading, or the courses that you've taken and you have the notes that you can tap into, or the network of friends that you've met through those courses. That is very valuable as well, because what I've learned is, while working on the stressful environment and a stressful job, sometimes it is very hard to have that extra energy after work to be learning, because you're already learning and being challenged a lot on the spot. However, there is still things that you don't know that you need to know, and there's things that you don't know and you need to learn as well. And how do you incorporate that into your professional life while having that overall stability, balance, and sustainable progression? That in itself is an art of how to be a true professional, and that's what I've learned, getting more of a glimpse of how to achieve that, and the direction that, hey, actually I'm on the right spot. Find your system, refine your system, and make sure it is sustainable and it can give you energy, learnings, insight, enjoyment in the long run. So that is step number 3. I don't know why I said steps in the previous points, but this is point number 4. Just realize that this point, feel free to skip or feel free to stay, because it's really about product management. In this job, I've learned a lot about product management. There's a whole list. However, I've distilled the most applicable 3 points. And the first point, it's super cliche and it's always mentioned, and that is talking to users. I found this to be gold, because when I am lost and I feel demotivated or unsure about the future, unsure about the product roadmap, really doubting what the product vision or the product potential, I've went back and talked to users and interviewed potential users as well as existing users. The existing users allows me to know what is the most frustrating pain points, and it motivates me to solve them immediately. And for the potential clients, by just doing interviews, I get to better understand the product roadmap and the product vision and the product potential. And in this role, because it's a more B2B platform, I can't just go down the streets and to find these people to talk to. So I've worked with my sales guy, and together we were able to set up sales calls plus interview calls, and we've done about 15 to 20 of these calls. And throughout those calls, after 5 to 6 calls, I see a pattern, I see what they're saying, and it just really sparks me. And I'm like, oh yeah, we've been discussing about this point in the meeting, but like previous points, do your homework. In those meetings, you have something insightful to add to those conversations, and it can help drive the product roadmap and a product direction, really understanding the pain point, really honing your previous assumptions in the meeting. So get out the building, talk to these people. It's always a goal for me. And I've implemented the system where continuous product discovery by Marissa talks about implementing an automated system. So I've sent my Calendly link to my sales guy, and he will help me book interview calls, and that's how I get an inflow on a weekly basis, and that worked really well. Point number 2 is getting better at organizing. What I'm really good at is generating a lot of ideas. I'm very creative, I'm very curious. However, what I realize is that how to distill those down and to prioritize them, and how to capture them and organize in one place, because maybe sometimes I have it on my phone, sometimes it's on the ClickUp on that system that we use. Sometimes, it's a shower thought. So just getting better at project management as well is something that I realize I need to improve on a little bit, just to get more organized in my professional and also my personal life. So it's funny how my flaws, it makes sense, right? My personal flaws or weakness also shows up at work. But I've also learned to just be a lot more detail oriented. So within the product, for example, in inventory management, maybe you need to export a certain file. In the file, there's a terms and conditions. In that terms and condition, maybe line 6, there's a gap. Maybe there is a dot that needs to be there that it's not, spelling errors. Like, I am really reluctant to go into these micro details, but I realize that the devil is in the detail, and you really need to stick your head down, embrace those little details. It won't move the needle, but it will polish up the product. It would really add that touch, add that professionalism. And so I've learned to not be afraid of those details. Remember when I said that I sometimes tend to focus too much on the top and neglect my plate, my bowl? I think sometimes it comes from the avoidance of the details, really kind of getting the flow and losing myself there. And that's why I realized to make sure your plate is being handled, those details are being looked over and dealt with, and then you can expand your horizon. Also, why the detail part is important is because, and the organization part is important, because I realized part of the Scrum and the sprint cycle was delayed at certain times is because certain dependencies weren't being collected immediately. I was maybe focusing on sprint 5 and 6 stuff that was really important, but we are in sprint 3 and there's something that needs to be collected right away. So after that, sprint 4 and 5, I realized, okay, let's just focus on the next sprint and the next sprint and stuff. I was kind of thinking about in the whole product perspective rather than sometimes, okay, what needs to be immediately, dealt with. I guess there's some sort of rookie mistake in some certain sense. Sometimes your enthusiasm and passion can kind of lead you that direction, but really what you need to be getting is this certain thing. And I guess I realized these things because I asked for feedback. In the sprint retros, I asked the team, hey, what can be done? And I also have one-on-ones with my developers and ask them, what's the feedback? And they say overall is good, but this one point, I think, Marco, you need to get more organized in terms of prioritizing and knowing what is the most important. I think that for me, and later on I'm going to talk about, is how I keep learning and growing fast on a weekly basis in my job because of the next part in stakeholder management. So let's go to point number 5. Insight number 6, we're almost there. If you stay till the end, I'll also share some of my personal learnings from the one-on-ones I have with the CEO and the boss as well. So it's also related to point number 6. It's the extension of it, and that is stakeholder management. What that means is just being a people person, understanding the context. Remember that org chart, that context of where the business are and the purpose, and who are the persons there, who your relationship and the key people that you need to be working with closely. Once you have that understanding, which part interferes or is interconnected with other parts, and you're able to find someone with that specific part that could help you move the needle in certain parts. So having that context in your mind definitely helps. And I think in this point, just know who to involve and who to speak to get the thing you want sorted. And I think another point is, just understanding people's communication style and language. When I spoke to a colleague of mine, My colleague didn't really appreciate the fact that I was very in her face and very enthusiastic with my style and approach, but appreciate her for giving the feedback, and I was able to adjust based on what made sense for her. And so I reached out, through written ahead of time to not distract her flow and stuff like that. So it's all about just, understanding and being a people person and being open to feedback, putting your ego down, being openly vulnerable. And that leads to a second sub point, which is learn how to ask for feedback. I think this is huge, and this has helped me learn and grow a lot. And I think it comes from my coaching background, where I love knowing where my weak spots are. And also, sometimes I can come across a little too overly enthusiastic, or I can tend not to be humble enough. And so I want to balance that out by, asking for those one-on-ones and really asking, how am I doing? Please feel free to openly, candidly tell me where I can improve, and also asking where you are doing well. And I have created those one-on-ones with my colleagues, with my superiors, with the stakeholders, with the vendors, with the team. So across different spectrums, I really ask this question. And I think just putting your character into the spotlight and to know how can this character improve has been a great, valuable habit for me. And along that topic, it is to not be afraid to ask for feedback from HR or from your boss or from your manager, people that might seem a bit scary. Luckily I had a really supportive HR mentor in this company, and I've scheduled one-on-ones with him multiple times when I have faced a certain problem, and he can give me a certain insight, a certain perspective, and my consciousness state has just evolved after that single 1 hour meeting with him. And those valuable sessions really help shape the way I think and how help me mature it up quicker. And also with my manager, I was able to have, daily one-on-ones at certain points, and certain point it was weekly, but having those quick feedback session has been great. And to my last bonus point, with my boss as well, I scheduled, not that often, because he's a busy person, about once per month. And, he has told me that is something he appreciated, me keep asking for his time. That puts me at top of his mind, as well as just allows me to kind of understand his perspective quicker. I think he also told me that, he appreciated me not being shy to ask for the time. And that was really assuring, because at some point I was kind of hesitant and questioning myself whether, it is appreciated, because there wasn't really a formal discussion on whether it was appreciated or not. But, when I meditated, and when the certain time where I feel like, there needs to be something sorted out, or there's something I really wanted to know, I reached out. It wasn't coming from a place where, I need to have a good relationship with this person so that blah. It wasn't coming from that. It was more coming from a place where I genuinely wanted to know and figure things out, and I couldn't get the answer except from this person. And so, that was encouraging for my boss to tell me, hey, keep it going, it's good, kudos to you. And, to my bonus point, here are 5 tips and insights that I've learned from my boss. So first, and I've talked a lot about it in this video, is to be the most prepared person in the room. Once you've done your homework, you've spend time in the weeds and the details, you can have that confidence in in yourself and know that in that meeting you're the most prepared, you're the most knowledgeable person in this room, and that's something I need to keep reminding myself to keep doing, because sometimes I can forget that. Point number 2 is momentum. And what I mean by this is throughout the project, there are certain things that it didn't really look too clear, or the pieces weren't in the place where I felt we can keep going. Maybe we need to pause and really fix the pieces first. And I think what I've learned from my boss is to just keep pushing, keep going. Like, the external factors is never 100% perfect. You need to keep the momentum going and don't stop. So maybe it's a certain wrong, quote unquote, wrong direction. But if you can afford the worst case scenario there, just keep going, whether that's on a personal level or that is on a business level. So, keep the ball moving, keep it going, keep the ideas flowing. That's how you learn the best. Don't analyze too much. The next point, pursuit of excellence. This was a point where my boss emphasized when we first had our one-on-one. So just making sure that you're taking care of your customers in the best way, because at the end of the day, businesses are people, and people appreciate good service, good attention to detail, good craftsmanship. So taking pride on what you give and giving that with style, I think that's something that I've learned from my boss and in this environment. So yeah, thank you for that. And the last point is, when you're pointing a finger, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. This was a huge point because, like Jim Rohn has said, right, if you want things to change, you have to change. Again, throughout this project, there were sometimes issues with vendors. There might be issues with a lot of externalities, and we can point our fingers and blame that. And it's not to say that it doesn't have a factor, but how can I keep improving to make that situation better and make the most out of it? So, it has made me reflect not to always blame people, not to always say that something is wrong, but go within, understanding how can I be better? How can I improve? How can I pick up a shovel and get some stuff done? Where am I lacking that would lead to a better situation? Where am I responsible for in this situation? How can I be better? And that's always the most productive question. So yeah, those are some of the things that I've learned from my boss, and I really appreciate that. In the next couple of months, my life is still a question mark. I don't know if I'll be joining a new company, but I'm learning to embrace uncertainty, face it with faith, and to be open to the possibility, get excited again, not to dwell on that things need to be a certain way. And now, with a newfound confidence and value in myself to a certain extent, and my market value, having that experience under my belt, I know what I can give in that next opportunity when it comes. So that's me, Marco Check, 2023 product manager, documenting his life at 25 here in Hong Kong. I hope this video has helped you gain a little bit more perspective, get a little bit more prepared for your future job or current job. And if you have certain points that I didn't mention, I'm sure you do, please leave it in the comment section below. Share one juicy insight that you have learned from your job in this video, and I'll really appreciate that. And if you like the vibe, subscribe. Peace and love as always. Namaste. I hope to see you very freaking soon. Check out.